now to bring Masthenia Gravis in focus is Kim Labounty, Executive Director of the Masthenia Gravis Foundation of Illinois. Welcome to Fox Valley in Focus. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with an introduction to Masthenia Gravis, what it is and who is usually diagnosed with it.
Sure. Masthenia gravis is a widely undiagnosed and misdiagnosed autoimmune disease. We call it the snowflake disease, actually, because it affects everybody differently. It's treated differently in each patient. It's a pretty rare disease as well. In a population of, say, 10,000, there might be somewhere between 2 and 7 people who have it. So when a patient first contacts us, we will tell them that it will be a test of their patience because it is such a rare disease, and it can be frustrating. It can be frustrating. The disease itself often affects people, men over the age of 60, women under the age of 40, but there's exceptions to that rule all the time.
Now, what would someone look for in symptoms? Because I understand from testimonials on your website that it's very difficult to diagnose, and people struggle for years trying to find out, pinpoint exactly what it is that's wrong with them.
Absolutely. It's not uncommon for it to be years before someone is properly diagnosed. And so we look for specific symptoms, and it works its way down, I guess you could say. Common symptoms would be a droopy eyelid, blurred vision, double vision, working your way down, difficulty chewing, swallowing, slurred speech actually is quite common, especially after someone's been talking a while. Their speech gets very slurred. They might have trouble swallowing as well. And then it gets into more generalized conditions of fatigue in your arms, your neck, your legs. I've had someone describe it to me because I don't have the disease myself, but a patient has described it to me as when you're wading through the water, and the struggle it is to walk through the water. That's how it feels to actually walk on a day-to-day basis with MG.
Now, what kind of prognosis is there with a disease like MG?
Typically, someone will be diagnosed by a neurologist, often led by an ophthalmologist, actually, because about 85% of the patients have ocular conditions, the double vision, the droopy eyelid, and so they often go to an eye doctor first. And the ophthalmologist, after several questions, says this is not something that glasses will fix. And so if they're on the ball, they'll often lead the patient then to a neurologist who then can diagnose it.
And is there a profile? You said that it's women under 45 and men over 60. Is there a profile of the typical Masthenia gravis patient?
Well, again, it's hard to say typical, which again is why we call it the snowflake disease, because it affects everybody so differently. But again, I think 85% of the patients do have ocular symptoms, that blurred vision, double vision, the droopy eyelid, and then it does get into sometimes the slurred speech, the difficulty swallowing, breathing perhaps.
So there's not really a profile of someone who's in a certain ethnic group or
not at all.
Age demographic or...
No, Masthenia gravis will affect anyone of any age, of any ethnic background. It's actually not necessarily inherited from a parent to child. Oftentimes we'll see siblings who have it more often than a parent and child.
And it also serves as kind of a trigger for other autoimmune diseases based on what it said on your website.
Right. That's quite common, where someone will be diagnosed with Masthenia gravis and several years later will develop other autoimmune diseases. Certainly the symptoms. Another challenge that our patients have is not necessarily struggles with the disease, but struggles with the treatments for those diseases, the drugs that these patients have to take, the side effects of those. You end up taking, say, a prednisone, which has plenty of side effects in and of itself, and so then you might take something to counterbalance that, and so it's a constant process and struggle. And so you end up getting other diseases because it affects your autoimmune system. You get sick more often. We have to be real careful with viruses and making sure everyone gets their flu shots and such.
Now, most autoimmune diseases that are chronic are very isolating, and it doesn't sound like MG is any different. And that's one of the purposes the foundation exists, is to provide that support and a resource for people who are diagnosed and their families. Tell us about some of the programs you offer.
Absolutely. MG patients, because it is so rare and it is such a frustrating disease, it's hard to share that as a patient with other people and have them really understand. So one of the main focuses of our organization is to provide support groups. We have 9 throughout the state of Illinois, as well as in Northwest Indiana and the Quad Cities. And those support groups meet regularly, and so many times a newly diagnosed patient will arrive to a support group and be relieved because finally someone says, I know what you're talking about, or I've been through that. My spouse understands what your spouse is going through, and the frustrations of not understanding the disease. And it's an opportunity for patients to share their stories, share developments in their disease and what's working and what's not with other patients. They often learn more from each other than from a doctor visit, just simply because of that experience and what's working and what's not. And then as well, we like to provide our support groups with various information, resources, speakers, so they can even learn more.
And on your website, you have all those areas outlined. It shows where they meet, when they meet, how frequently they meet,
Exactly.
So people have a way. How has the internet changed the way you reach out to people and how people receive their information in a support group where they might have been isolated previously?
Sure. One of the best tools we've had is actually YouTube. We've established a YouTube channel, and on our channel we have clips of educational programs that we have held. We hold 2 a year, and so we record those and provide condensed clips. And so oftentimes if a patient calls us and says, will you please send me information, obviously we'll send them to our website, but if they need something in the mail or they want something to distribute to friends or their physician, in the meantime we say go to that YouTube channel and get some great 5-minute, 7-minute clips of information about MG in general, the ocular symptoms, the fatigue, sleep apnea is another challenge our patients have.
We're going to take a quick break,
Sure.
and then when we come back, we'll continue our conversation.